If you feel anything like I do, you're just constantly swimming in information. Reports, articles, data, history. It's all coming at you all the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. It's overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah.
And it can actually make you feel less informed, not more. That's really what we try to cut through here on the deep dive. We take these complex sources, we sort through the noise, and we pull out the ideas that really, resonate.
It's a shortcut.
It is. It's a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. But today, we're doing something a little bit different.
We are. And it's fascinating because today's deep dive actually asks us to sort of reject that whole idea of information overload to begin with.
How so?
Well, we're not dealing with the dense academic text full of facts you have to memorize. It's the opposite. We're engaging with an invitation to unlearn what we think we know about history, about memory, about time itself.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Our source today is the book Ghosts of Deep Time by Pedro Malha. And it classifies itself in this very specific, almost mystical way. It calls itself poetic nonfiction. And it's all about finding what lingers, what breathes just beneath the surface of the past we think we know. It's not a textbook. It's more like an exercise in changing your attention.
And that distinction is just so critical, especially for anyone listening who's here to learn something. We have to be really clear about what Malha even means by memory.
Okay.
Because for us, memory is information, right? It's a fact you look up, a date, a story. But the book's core mission, and it says this right up front, is to offer a sensory encounter with memory, not as information, but as presence.
Memory as presence. That's a huge leap. Can you break that down a bit before we really jump in?
I can try. Memory as information is knowing that, say, ancient people walked along a certain path.
Okay, a fact.
A fact. Memory as presence is feeling the rhythm of their steps sort of echoing in your own steps as you walk that same land today. It's this awareness that time doesn't just vanish. It collects. It lingers. And it waits for us to sense it.
So Malha is saying this presence is everywhere, layered and patient.
Exactly. If we can just get quiet enough to notice it.
Time does not end. It lingers. It listens. It waits to be remembered. That's the core theme right there. And our mission for this deep dive is to walk through the entire structure and all the themes of this incredible book, which explores, as he puts it, what was lost before language.
It's a journey, for sure. And it moves in echoes and spirals, not straight lines.
And it's also worth noting, this is just the first part of a trilogy, right?
It is, yeah. The Ghosts Movement trilogy. This first one, Ghosts of Deep Time, is all about the deep past, these echoes we can't name. The next books are Ghosts of Living Time and then Ghosts Beyond Time.
So present and future.
Exactly. The whole project is about exploring how this idea of layered, patient presence applies to all of time past, present, and what's to come.
Okay, so before we get into the 20 chapters and all the specific content, we have to talk about the structure.
Yeah.
You call this an experience, not a read, and I think that's right. Understanding how Malha built this book is the key.
It's essential. The whole identity of the book hangs on this idea that memories remain real even when the timelines blur. It's dedicated to wondering, to listening for what isn't said.
And the structure is the tool for that.
It's the mechanism. It's literally designed to train you, the reader, to shift from demanding intellectual answers to just embracing sensory input. If the ideas feel a little abstract, the structure is the path to actually feeling them.
Right. To stop demanding answers and start embracing sensation. Let's unpack the design of each chapter because it's this deliberate 6-part ritual. Let's start with the very first thing you encounter, the meditative pauses.
These are placed right at the beginning of a chapter, before any real text. And they're just these quiet invitations, a few sparse lines.
And they're not instructions like breathe in, breathe out.
No, not at all. They're described as doorways to calm. They just invite you to slow down, to notice presence, to sense a bit of quiet before you dive in. It's about creating a moment of stillness, preparing your mind to receive rhythm and feeling, not just facts.
And that sense of calm then flows right into the second element, the reflective stories.
Yeah, these are very small sensory glimpses into a memory or a possibility that come right after the pause.
So I have a little anecdote.
Almost, but even lighter than that. They're like little windows or mirrors. They don't tell you what to think. They just offer a quiet space to sense and wonder. It might be about the feel of wind on an ancient hill or a forgotten path. It just sets the emotional tone for what's coming.
And what's coming is the heart of the chapter, the living reflections.
This is the core, the immersive sensory narrative. And the book is very explicit here. Read them slowly. Focus on what you feel, not just what you understand.
So if you rush through looking for the main point, you're missing it.
You're missing everything. The feeling, the resonance, that is the point. That's the path to the memory itself. These sections guide you to feel forgotten paths or sense the quiet beneath your own thoughts. It's an experience.
And then, after that immersive part, you get this quiet moment at the end, the memory experience.
Right. These are just open spaces for reflection. They explicitly invite you to touch this idea of presence in your own life. You might be asked to remember a past feeling, or just breathe in the present, or sense a future possibility.
So they're not questions with answers.
No, they're invitations. Invitations to feel the continuity of time. The book calls them a gentle presence, a quiet companion that meets you where you are.
Okay. Which brings us to maybe the most interesting part of the structure.
Mm.
The mirrored questions. This is a real challenge for the reader.
This is Mulhau's signature move. It's what he calls the quiet confrontation. These questions at the very end of the chapter are written backwards, in mirror writing.
So you literally cannot read them without effort.
Exactly. You have to hold the book up to a mirror or a reflective surface, and the intent is stated right there. The hardest truths are the ones we choose not to face. You can just turn the page and ignore it, but then the question stays hidden. The act of choosing to engage, to find a mirror, to see the truth, it transforms reading into a physical ritual.
That's fascinating. But I have to ask, is there a risk that it's just a gimmick?
Yeah.
Prioritizing this sensation over real intellectual rigor. Shouldn't a profound question be able to stand on its own?
That's a fair question. And it goes back to this being poetic nonfiction. He isn't trying to win a debate. He's trying to alter your state of consciousness. The mirror is a tool.
Okay.
It's less about the content of the question, which is usually simple and deep, and more about the act of seeking it. By making you physically stop, find a mirror, and confront the reverse text, he forces a break in that passive flow of just consuming words. The rigor is relational. It demands your presence, your choice.
So the medium really is the message there. It stops you from just consuming and makes you participate.
That's it exactly. And finally, the whole thing is held together by echoes and repetition.
Right. I noticed certain phrases and images keep coming back.
They do. But it's not duplication. It's meant to be a deepening rhythm, like a wave returning to the shore. But each time, with a little more clarity, a little more force, it reinforces that core belief. Memory doesn't move in straight lines. It returns in circles.
Presence unfolding through feeling.
And you feel it more deeply each time it returns.
And this entire method, this whole approach, starts with the prologue, which is titled, What We've Lost the Words For.
Yeah, and the prologue just sets the whole stage perfectly. It's this recognition that we carry things in our bones that are older than speech, wiser than instinct.
I love that line.
It's powerful, and it argues that not all ghosts come after death. Some were born before memory, before language. It points to ritual, to the shaping of stone, to myths as these presences that linger without a name. The book is about what refuses to be forgotten, not what can be proven with a footnote. So now that we get the method, the structure that's meant to sharpen our attention, we can move into the first big section of the book, Shadows in the Earth. And this is where the book focuses on the physical traces, the what that remains. And it immediately starts to challenge our whole idea of timelines and progress.
It's using concrete things like stone and ash to talk about this abstract idea of presence.
It's the bridge from the philosophical to the paleontological. And it starts, literally, on the ground with Chapter 1. The ones who walk tall. This is about ancient footprints.
Like the Laetoli footprint.
Exactly. He uses those famous footprints, but not as a scientific data point. He presents them as this intimate portrait. He focuses on these two figures walking side by side through volcanic ash that hardened into stone.
And he emphasizes their stride.
He does. He talks about them walking with rhythm, with a deliberate spacing. He's not treating these steps as just relics. They're echoes of intention, of awareness.
So the insight is that if they were walking with a shared rhythm, a shared purpose, they must have had an inner life, a connection that we can recognize.
Precisely. They knew things. They felt things, just like we do. Maybe it was companionship. Maybe it was shared grief. The key takeaway is that the spacing, the rhythm, it suggests a complexity that challenges that old view of our early ancestors as simple or clumsy. It's about their inner world.
So from walking, we move to making in Chapter 2, The Whisper in the Stone. This is all about the difference between a rock and a tool.
And Mala's definition here is so evocative. He says, a tool is a thought made solid.
Wow.
It's that moment, an idea, the need for an edge, a point, a grip leaps from the mind and imprints itself on the physical world. It shows intention.
And this is where he gets into the controversial
Yeah.
stuff, right? The
Yeah.
so-called out-of-place artifacts.
Yep. He talks about these shaped stones, tools that clearly have been flaked with intent, but they're found in geological layers that are way too old for accepted timelines.
So they don't fit the neat story of progress.
They fracture it. And he notes how these mistakes are often silenced or just filed away in a drawer somewhere to protect that established ladder of human progress.
But his point is that shaping the stone is itself a kind of memory.
It is. It's seeing a form waiting inside the raw rock, knowing exactly where your hand needs to rest to make it useful. He calls it the whisper of a mind, resonating across thousands, maybe millions of years.
So if Chapter 2 is about things that are found, Chapter 3, the silence beneath bone, is this powerful counter-argument about what is not found.
Right. This chapter critiques the fossil record itself. Malha argues that the fossil record is just a record of luck, not lineage.
A record of luck.
Yeah. History, in this view, is built from leftovers. And as he says, the best parts spoil first. Think about it. The beautiful textiles, the wooden tools, the subtle art made by forest peoples, all of it is gone, decayed.
So the gaps in the record aren't just gaps.
He argues they're a presence of their own. He asks us to consider entire peoples whose tools and bodies just decayed completely, leaving behind what he calls a wilderness of absence. That silence, he says, is the loudest clue. We have to let the absence be a presence and listen to what isn't there.
Which is a huge challenge to how history is written, because it's based on what survives. We're biased towards stone and bone.
Completely biased. And that idea of an internal presence, of something remaining even when the physical evidence is gone, leads directly into Chapter 4, Ghosts in Our Blood. This is where it gets personal. It moves from the earth into your own body.
Yeah, this chapter is really powerful. It just shatters that simple, single-story idea of human descent.
It does. It shows that we're a mosaic. We are this woven fabric of ancient Neanderthal, Denisovan, and even what scientists call ghost ancestry from unknown beings, all written into our DNA.
And these fragments aren't just data. He says they're alive in us.
They are. They're shaping how we breathe, how we react to the cold, how our immune systems work. And this is where he introduces that idea of memory without memory.
Like epigenetics.
Exactly. The central question of the chapter is profound. If trauma, if stress and famine can echo down through generations and change how our genes express themselves, why wouldn't deeper knowing echo as well, or feeling, or wisdom?
So my anxieties, my phobias, they might not just be mine.
They could be a historical archive. Our bodies, Malha suggests, are haunted archives, vessels of ancient pains and alliances that were never written down.
That completely changes your perspective on your own instincts. So that sudden, inexplicable panic I might feel in a small space,
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily my claustrophobia. It could be an echo from an ancestor trapped in a rockfall.
It connects you directly to deep time. It makes you a conscious participant in the history that's held inside your own cells.
Okay, let's go back to challenging that line of progress with Chapter 5.
Yes.
Thought before flame. This questions when intelligence really began.
Yeah, we have this assumption that, real consciousness started with fire and technology. But Malha asks this incredible question. What were minds capable of deep thought doing in the long, cold dark before fire?
They weren't just surviving.
No, they were witnessing. They were mapping the landscape in total darkness, tracing patterns in the stars, dreaming without light. It's a different kind of intelligence.
What kind?
He redefines intelligence here as presence and witness, not mastery. A dark brilliance, this deep sensitivity and resonance with the environment that just doesn't fossilize. Imagine the sensory skill it would take to navigate just by sound, by the feel of the air. That knowing is largely forgotten because it didn't leave any ruins behind.
And if they had that kind of sensory awareness, it stands to reason they had sophisticated communication. Which brings us to Chapter 6. The wind still speaks.
He suggests that before writing fixed everything down, meaning was passed through rhythm, gesture, breath. It was meant to be alive and vanish.
Like a cloud shadow.
Yes. And he makes this radical suggestion that maybe the greatest languages were never written down at all because they were meant to be free, to change. We might have lost entire ways of communing, whistles, tones, specific rhythms that only survive as a feeling, a stirring we get when we hear a sound we don't understand but somehow feel.
Wow. And this sense of shared feeling is there in the earliest signs of humanity, which is Chapter 7, Rituals of the Buried Ones.
This is about how grief leaves a shape. You see it in ancient graves, bodies carefully placed, knees bent, stained with ochre, maybe with flowers. These gestures are often older than we expect complex culture to be.
It's reverence. It's not just instinct.
It speaks of reverence, and Mala proposes that maybe ritual came before culture, that this primal need to mark loss, to say you mattered, is what actually made us human.
And from the body, we move out to the land itself in Chapter 8, a map that no longer exists.
We forget the world breathed differently. The last ice age changed everything. Sea levels were so much lower, and there were these vast land bridges, rich valleys, hunting grounds that are now completely underwater.
The implication is huge. We could be missing entire chapters of culture.
Whole civilizations, maybe? What we call our origins might just be the cultures that happen to live on the high ground that was spared.
And this ties directly back to myth.
Absolutely. He says memory is waterproof. Those ancient global stories of a great flood might not be symbolic. They might be real echoes of a shared geological trauma, a memory held in our collective marrow.
Now, Chapter 9. The silence beneath is about a different kind of loss. Not a flood, but a quiet vanishing.
This chapter is so provocative. He looks at cultures that seem to have just dissolved. No sign of fire, no conquest, just a calm absence.
So what's the theory?
He raises this profound possibility. What if the silence was a choice? What if not enduring was a legacy? Maybe they chose not to build in stone. Maybe they preferred to leave rhythm rather than ruins, to honor the earth by returning what they'd borrowed from it.
That's a total rejection of the ego of civilization, the need to leave a mark.
It is. Their absence is a presence we refuse to hear because we're programmed to look for monuments.
Okay, so last in this section, Chapter 10, the shapes that remain. This is about the anomalies, the things that just don't fit.
Yeah, the objects that are too refined, too early, too perfect. Ancient metallic spheres, precisely carved spirals, figures that just defy the simple story of our beginnings.
And his take is that they aren't mistakes.
They're not mistakes or hoaxes. They are memories waiting to be remembered. They suggest that complexity came and went, maybe more than once, that the story of humanity is way more cyclical and messy than we like to admit.
And he says the reason they persist, why we can't just dismiss them,
is their form, the perfect unbidden fit of the object in a human hand. That intimate physical connection is the reason they linger, even when they're chronologically inconvenient. The memory is carried in the fit of the hand.
So we've gone through the physical shadows in the earth, the traces in our own blood. Now the book makes a really big shift.
It does, a crucial one. We move from the external traces to the internal and cultural resonance, how these deep time echoes are still moving through us right now.
From the archive in the ground to the archive in the mind.
And in our shared stories, which is where it starts with Chapter 11, Echoes and Myth.
Right. Stories like the Great Flood, the Divine Twin, the fall from a golden age, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, across cultures that had no contact. And he says this isn't by chance, it's by resonance. These myths aren't literal history, but they tell us how it felt.
So the flood myth is how it felt to live through rising waters. The fall is how it felt to experience some kind of rupture or forgetting.
Exactly. They aren't facts. They are shared, fundamental human experiences. Rhythms that survive the words themselves, touching us with a truth that can't be dated but can be felt deep down.
From that shared mythic space, Chapter 12, the mind that carries others gets even more personal. It questions the nature of our own consciousness.
This is a big one. It challenges our whole Western idea of the mind as this sealed room, sealed tightly in bone and skin.
Instead, he says it's porous.
It's porous, a shared field where ancient thoughts or feelings can pass through like whispers. He reframes intuition here, not as some random gut feeling, but as a whisper from without.
A whisper from without. What does that mean?
A sense of someone else's thought or an ancient knowing just passing through us.
Wait, so when I get a sudden flash of intuition, it's not just my subconscious working. It could literally be the echo of someone else's ancient thought passing through my mind. That changes everything about how I view my own awareness.
It does. He's clear it's not possession, it's resonance. We are chords, not single notes, a chorus of awareness. Those moments of sudden clarity with no rational basis might be those ancient chords resonating within our porous minds, reminding us that we aren't isolated individuals.
Okay, so Chapter 13. The ones who came before feels like a return to the earlier chapters, but with this new lens of inner life.
It's a synthesis. It looks back at the ancient kin, the Neanderthals, the early toolmakers who left those handprints and beads and carvings. But now it emphasizes that this is concrete evidence of imagination, of an inner life that existed long before Homo sapiens took over.
So deep thought was a constellation.
Yes, lighting up in different forms at different times across different species. We aren't the first to dream or to grieve. We are just adding to an already crowded canvas. We're the latest to remember.
Chapter 14. The thing still waiting brings us right into the present day, and it's a bit of a critique of how we manage all this knowledge.
It is. The book reminds us that our picture of the past is so incomplete. It's filled with unlabeled boxes and misfiled fragments, just gathering dust in museum basements.
These are the things still waiting.
Exactly, because they're the evidence that just doesn't fit the neat story we want to tell. And Malha's warning is that the real challenge isn't finding the next artifact. It's letting go of our need for those neat stories and realizing that the strange, anomalous thing is often a message, an echo we've chosen to ignore.
And then chapter 15. The stories still untold talks about narratives that were never meant to be permanent.
These are stories never meant for ink or stone. They were sung or moved through the body. They were meant to be alive and free, like breath.
So where do they live now?
Malha suggests they live in small, subtle gestures. A specific path walked every day, a particular hum while you're gardening, a pause beside an old tree. They aren't lost, he says, they're just sleeping. Waiting for a listener quiet enough to feel their rhythm without needing the exact words.
That leads perfectly into chapter 16.
Yeah.
You are part of the memory. This is where the focus turns completely inward. It puts the responsibility on you, the listener.
This is the moment of fusion. The past is declared to be within us, breathing under our skin, moving in our flinches and our dreams. We are vessels of echoes. We are held, not haunted.
He gives specific examples, like our pull toward fire or water.
Or that inexplicable urge to stack stones, making a little cairn on a beach or placing rocks in a garden.
So when I go to the beach and I find myself building a little stack of stones, that's not just me being idle. That's an unbidden memory, an echo of the rituals from chapter 7.
Precisely. It's a fluent memory that was never taught because it never needed language. He's saying time is a circle. The past isn't behind us. It's still becoming itself through us. And every one of those small gestures reaffirms that circle.
So if the memory's in us, chapter 17, the return path is about how we access it.
Right. And journeys are reframed. They aren't outward lines of progress. They are inward returns of attention. A re-entry into awareness.
So awakening is reawakening.
It's a pull toward wholeness, often felt through sorrow or silence or sudden clarity. The key insight is that the path isn't something you walk, it's something you become. You keep arriving in the present moment, but with a greater awareness of what's lingering inside you.
And that inward focus just keeps deepening with chapter 18, listening again.
This is a call for a much older, deeper kind of listening, not waiting for words, but sensing the shape of silence, the weight of a moment.
Listening as participation.
Yes, stepping into the world with all your senses open. Letting the world speak through its quietest signs, a change in the air, the angle of the light. The earth speaks in signs and invitations, not commands. We just have to be still enough to hear them.
And the book argues some people never stop listening. That's chapter 19, the ones who didn't forget.
It focuses on those who still walk the old ways, and not as a performance for tourists, but as a living continuity. They're knowing lives in their attention, not in monuments. They tend the earth, they walk lightly, they sing softly.
They're bridges.
They're bridges and roots, reminding us how to feel what modern life has forced us to stop noticing. Their existence proves that some knowing never actually went quiet.
Which brings us to the end, chapter 20, the echo that remains, and the epilogue.
The end of the telling is not silence, it's resonance. The story doesn't close. It's designed to ripple outward. Memory is confirmed as a spiral that turns, continually touching the same feelings with new eyes.
And the final invitation
Is direct and powerful. You are now part of the memory. Carry the echo forward. The story doesn't end. It lingers. It listens, and it remembers through you.
And the epilogue is called The Story That Does Not Close.
Yes. It emphasizes that you don't close this kind of story. You step into a silence that listens. It brings you right back to the beginning, to that meditative pause, having completed the circle and ready to carry that depth into the next moment. So if we're going to synthesize this whole experience of Ghosts of Deep Time for you, the listener, I think the main takeaway is this. The goal isn't to update your knowledge base. You're not going to leave this with a list of new dates or facts.
No.
The goal is to radically refine your attention. It's a shift in how you understand what presence even is. It's recognizing that the greatest memories are found in the stillness. They're felt, not known.
It really is about changing your relationship with the world around you.
Hmm.
Recognizing those ancient, unbidden rhythms in your own life. Why are you instinctively drawn to the sea? Or why does a deep forest give you this incredible sense of peace? The book is saying those feelings are fluent memory speaking through you. You aren't just haunted by the past. You are deliberately and beautifully held by it.
It's a truly radical idea. And if the entire premise is that memory moves in layers and we are constantly echoing the deep past, that leads to a final provocative thought.
Which is tied to the rest of the trilogy. Ghosts of Living Time and Ghosts Beyond Time.
Exactly. So if deep past memories surface through stillness and intuition, and if the past is still becoming itself through us in this moment, then we have to ask, what subtle traces are we already carrying from the future, from ghosts beyond time?
Wow.
What sense of possibility, what unbidden wisdom about what's coming, what warnings or guidances are already resonating inside us, just waiting for us to get quiet enough to feel them?
So you're not just remembering the past.
You may already be resonating with what is to come.
That sense of future presence is the perfect note to end on. You aren't walking toward the future. You're already resonating with it. Thank you for diving deep into the poetic nonfiction of Ghosts of Deep Time with us. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers.